A very good morning to you. Welcome to Early Exchange on Souk News, beaming live from Lagos, Nigeria. My name is Ayo Jimmy, and I have beside me Blessing Ehije.
Good morning, Ayo. Thank you for joining us on Early Exchange. Yes, we are ready to update you as well as provide you perspective that will enable development in everything you do personally, in your business, and by extension, the nation and the world over. We'll join Ola Oluwa, who's ready to bring us the news right now. Good morning, Ola.
Yes, good morning. This is the news update, and I'm Ola Oluwa. Coming your way are the most significant developments in the world, so stay tuned. The Federation Accounts Allocation Committee, FAC, has disbursed a total of 966.1 billion naira in July 2023 Federation Accounts revenue to the federal government, state and local government councils. This distribution is comprised of 397.4 billion in distributable statutory revenue, 271.9 billion naira in distributable value-added tax (VAT) revenue, 12.8 billion naira in electronic money transfer levy (EMTL) revenue, and 283.9 billion naira in exchange difference revenue. The deductions for cost of collection totaled 62.4 billion naira, and deductions for savings, transfers, refunds, and tax credit cancellation were 717.9 billion naira. The excess crude account ECA balance for the month was pegged at 473,754.5 naira. Away from that, the Lagos State Environmental Protection Agency, LASEPA, has extended its Cash for Trash initiative to Surulere part of Lagos as part of its commitment to environmental sustainability. The expansion was announced during the commissioning of the LASEPA Surulere Zonal Office. The initiative aims to promote a circular economy and waste-to-value model, encouraging proper waste disposal, reducing single-use plastics, water conservation, and eco-friendly practices. And due to rising operational costs, airline operators in Nigeria believe an air ticket from Lagos to Abuja should cost around 250,000 naira. Spokesperson for the Airline Operators of Nigeria and Chairman of United Nigeria Airlines, Obiora Okonkwo, said this. He emphasized the need for local airlines to access foreign exchange through a designated window facilitated by the Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN, to address forex challenges. He also expressed concern over the high cost of aviation fuel, attributing it to speculative practices, and he called on the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation, NNPC, to intervene. He urged the government to recognize the aviation sector as an essential industry and cautioned against interference with existing regulatory frameworks. And the Kaduna State government has introduced a palliative support program to mitigate the impact of petrol subsidy removal on residents. Governor Ubasani unveiled the initiative, which involves a 2 billion naira palliative fund from the federal government, during a media briefing. The program aims to benefit 210,000 indigent households, which means over 1 million vulnerable individuals, in 3 phases. The phases include distributing food items, procuring free buses for transportation, and supporting farmers and small businesses with incentives and resources. A joint committee overseen by the State Deputy Governor has been established to ensure transparency in the program's implementation. And moving away from Nigeria, Africa's 5 representatives are preparing to compete in the Basketball World Cup, co-hosted by the Philippines, Japan, and Indonesia. Angola, Egypt, and Ivory Coast are traditional contenders, while Cape Verde and South Sudan are newcomers. But all 5 teams want to progress to the quarterfinals for the first time. Angola seeks to rebound after slipping in recent years, and South Sudan has been impressive despite challenges. Egypt aims to reclaim its past glory as a 5-time African champion. Cape Verde is optimistic despite being the smallest nation in the tournament, and Ivory Coast strives to improve its World Cup record under new leadership. In the 32-team tournament that also serves as an Olympic qualifier for Paris 2024, involves preliminary group stages followed by a knockout stage. Away from that, Russian President Vladimir Putin expressed his desire for an end to the conflict in Ukraine at the BRICS summit in Johannesburg, South Africa, where he participated virtually. There, he accused the West of unleashing the conflict and stated that Russia's actions in Ukraine were aimed at stopping the war and supporting those in Donbass. He emphasized the importance of a multipolar world order based on international law and respecting the sovereignty of nations. Putin also criticized attempts by certain countries to exert hegemony and influence over other nations. The BRICS summit, consisting of Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, is focused on asserting its influence as an alternative to Western dominance. It is time now to bring you briefs from outside of the continent that will come your way right after this break. Welcome back to the Morning News Update. Once again, I am Olaoluwa, where this time I start from Dubai. Dubai's virtual employee, Ramis, boosted customer satisfaction to 90% during a pilot use of ChatGPT. Dubai Electricity Water Authority, DEWA, plans to integrate artificial intelligence into other services after Crown Prince Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum launched the Dubai Center for Artificial Intelligence in June. Ramis reportedly learned to analyze customer queries with ChatGPT and respond quickly and accurately. Abu Dhabi's Crown Prince launched Mahaweb Talent Hub to train UAE nationals for the changing job market. 7,450 citizens received upskilling courses and 1,650 were placed in high priority sectors. The project is overseen by the Department of Government Support, DGS, and the Human Resources Authority, HRA, reflecting the leadership's commitment to investing in Emirati talent and improving human capital for commercial and public sectors. And away from that, India's Chandrayaan-3 has achieved a historic milestone as the first space mission to successfully land near the moon's south pole. Prime Minister Narendra Modi announced that India has now set foot on the moon as the spaceship Vikram lander makes a successful touchdown on the lunar surface. Inside the lander is a special rover called Pragyan. This rover has 6 wheels and is ready to move around on the moon's surface. It will take pictures and gather important information, and scientists are especially curious about deep holes in the moon that are always dark. India's lunar missions contribute to technological innovation, resource exploration, international collaboration, and skill development, all of which have the potential to drive economic growth, development, and inspire the next generation of scientists and engineers. Normalcy has returned to the Suez Canal after the slight collision between the liquefied natural gas carrier BW Lesmes made a sudden stop following a technical fault which coincides with a strong current that drove the oil tanker Buri towards it. The Suez Canal is one of the busiest waterways in the world and the shortest shipping route between Europe and Asia. According to the Canal Authority Chairman Osama Rabi, the incident necessitated the Canal Authority to respond by sending tugboats to move both ships. And similarly, he said that there is no significant damage or pollution, but that Buri had a steering problem that needed repair. The United States has imposed visa restrictions on some Chinese officials accused of indoctrinating Tibetan children. The restrictions are under Section 212A3C of the Immigration and Nationality Act, and the aim, according to the United States, is to prevent adverse foreign policy consequences for the U.S., and saying the unnamed Chinese officials aim to remove Tibet's cultural traditions among younger generations. And the Federal Bureau of Intelligence, FBI, has uncovered plans by hackers affiliated with the North Korea-backed Lazarus Group to cash out over $40 million in stolen funds through 6 Bitcoin addresses. The Bureau issued a warning to cryptocurrency companies to be cautious when dealing with transactions linked to these addresses. The funds stolen during various cryptocurrency heists were tracked by the FBI over the past 24 hours. The Lazarus Group, also known as the APT-38 and Trader, has been responsible for high-profile cryptocurrency heists, including thefts from AlphaPo, CoinSpade, and Atomic Wallet. The FBI is urging private sector entities to guard against transactions with some of these addresses while vowing to combat the group's illicit activities to generate revenue. And surgeons in Oxford have successfully performed the United Kingdom's first womb transplant. The recipient is a 34-year-old woman with a rare condition, and a 40-year-old sister served as the donor. Both women remain anonymous, but the surgical team, involving over 30 professionals, carried out the complex procedures lasting about 17 hours at the Churchill Hospital in February. The younger sister is in good health after the transplant, and the embryos are stored for future transfer. This landmark event marks a significant achievement in reproductive medicine in the United Kingdom, offering hope for women with conditions affecting their uterine function. And that's the morning news update for now. I am Olaoluwa. Stay tuned for deeper conversations as the early exchange continues with Blessing and Ayo.
Thanks for staying tuned. Yes, let's look at some of the stories that we just saw in the news. So we'll begin this morning from Lagos State, where the Lagos State Environmental Protection Agency has extended its Cash for Trash initiative to Surulere. Now, this is part of the initiative which aims to promote a circular economy and waste to value model, encouraging proper waste disposal, reducing single-use plastics, water conservation, and eco-friendly practices. Good morning, Dausa Osamaze. He is the Director, Policy and Research, African Development Study Center. I'm sure this gladdens your hearts.
Quite well. I'm gladdened to hear this news that we are becoming sustainable in Lagos. This conversation has been on for a very long time, and almost every country in the world is complying, and it's gladdening to hear that Lagos State government has taken a cue to see how we can actually preserve our environment and make the future livable for our children and those that are yet to be born.
Yes. Are you incentivizing waste disposal?
Well, I think the private players in this sector have taken that initiative earlier. What I mean is that this is something the government should have done, but it is never too late. I mean, which state in Nigeria should adopt, the Cash for Trash initiative, if not Lagos State? Look at the population of Lagos State itself, and look at the volume of waste being generated in Lagos State. And let's not forget that perhaps the most sensitive cord in the human body is the one that leads to the pocket. So when you are now connecting, cash to people's trash, then it makes sense. At the beginning, it is just to install a new habit in them and make them to focus on more responsible waste disposal. But after a while, you would not need to, incentivize them with cash any longer once you instill that culture in them. So I think this is something we should share, and all the states should emulate this.
Yeah, but I think also, apart from the cash aspect of it, there should be a whole lot of enlightenment from the state government to tell people why we have to be judicious in the use of plastics, because they're biodegradable materials that, of course, like the bottled water.
Yes.
Research says that it can stay up to like 200 years on the ground without decomposing.
And they will live up to that.
And nobody lives up to that. And so this destroyed the fertility of the soil. Carbon emissions is higher, and you see a whole lot of health issues that comes from this. So a clean society is actually good for the citizen. And then a lot of education and enlightenment need to be done in this regard. And I think that's what government should do, apart from just incentivizing with cash.
Yes, I think that is what will make it sustainable, because when the cash stops coming, people may revert to old ways.
It's called environmental stewardship. If we see ourselves as stewards of the environment, and we think of our children and the great-grandchildren we are yet to have, because we must leave something meaningful for them to live in. We must create an environment that will make them thrive. What is the essence of living their lives with yours now by degrading the environment? So if we see ourselves as stewards, then it becomes easier for any government to make us, to convince us to do the right thing. Nobody even needs conviction to do the right thing in the first place.
Yeah, but people do not do what is expected a lot of times. They do what is expected. So in order to be able to inspect them, that's where the incentive comes in, so that you can know how they dispose their refuse or waste. Well, that's a good thing, and we'll join our voices to, I join my voice to IRE to ask that other states emulate this for a cleaner Nigeria. And then Africa can also go ahead by adopting a model like this for African countries that have not yet adopted a model, so we can have a clean Africa. And now talking about Africa, Nigeria, Africa's 5 representatives are preparing to compete in the Basket World Cup, co-hosted by the Philippines, in Japan and Indonesia. Now, among the African countries, we have Angola, Egypt, Ivory Coast, and Cape Verde. So these countries are warming up to go to the Basketball World Cup. What are your thoughts? We know when it comes to football for the World Cup, we can to an extent predict where the Nigerian team would get to. But for basketball, what are your thoughts?
Well, I was speaking with a colleague yesterday, and he said to me, it's so shameful that the Cameroon Broadcasting Service is broadcasting that particular tournament, and there's no station in Nigeria that is paying attention to it. That also shows to us where our interests actually lie, that we are more a football nation than basketball nation. Probably God has not given us good height to play basketball, but I think that all sports should be given equal kind of opportunity. We can actually grow competence in this area and use it to bring in a lot of attractions and what's it called, tourism into our country. Saudi is doing that with football at the moment, and the UAE too is using Formula One. So we must be able to look at one sport that is globally acclaimed and see how we can create a destination for people who travels.
Okay, it's all about the popularity of the sport in Nigeria. If you go to the US, for instance, basketball is the in thing there. But here, an average Nigerian just believes sport is all about football because it is played everywhere. And let's not forget that you can't find basketball courts everywhere on the street. It takes a measure of investment. But football, even within this studio, you and I can design to play football here,
yes.
And with us being the goalkeeper. So,
why does he have to be the goalkeeper and not the striker?
You know, the truth of the matter is that I was a goalkeeper while I was
really?
Well, it was a prophet. I used to keep goal very well.
Okay, with time, but there is an untapped, gold mine in basketball if we can marshal our resources and it's not too late for us to start. We just have to put the right incentives in place to ensure that people are encouraged to go into the. We have tall people here.
Very tall people.
I am not the one that is tall, really.
I wish we were very tall.
When you see some of them, you just attempted to ask, do you play basketball? So I think even from the school level, the institutions, we should begin to encourage that and have national competitions for basketball, not just football. That way will bring more people into sports, because some persons would like to play one sport or the other, but because their attention is on football, it's a discouragement to them. Now, this may come as a shock, as Russian President Vladimir Putin has expressed his desire for an end to the conflict in Ukraine at the BRICS summit in Johannesburg, where he participated virtually. He's accused the West of unleashing the conflict and stated that Russia's actions in Ukraine were aimed to stop the war and support those in Donbass. He also emphasized the importance of a multipolar world order based on international law and respecting the sovereignty of nations. How do you react to this?
Well, I think that has been the foreign policy stance of Russia over time. And it's not something that is just new. And if you're a student of international politics, you know that Russia was not in Ukraine just because they needed to take Ukraine. Russia was in Ukraine to maintain the international global balance, which they have played over the years. Because, you know, people say America is the international policeman of the whole world. The only power that has checked America over the time since World War II had been Russia, from the old Soviet to now Russia. So they are the one that puts America to check. That power should not be localized in one nation. It should be decentralized. And that's why you see that there's a whole lot of effort from Russia to see how to actually mobilize other states and empower them to actually grow up. So what really is the core issue in Ukraine? The core issue in Ukraine is that Ukraine joining NATO was preparing that country as a launch pad against Russia by the NATO forces. And that is what Putin has been trying to resist. So you can't come and put your gunboat at our backyard. Who would tolerate that? So this drive for global balance has been the real motivation and driver for the world. And of course, the West has been exploring this to actually also immobilize Russia, as it were, so that, of course, Russia become so weak, and then, of course, NATO become very strong. But I think that there's a sense in a multipolar world. I said this yesterday, also while we're talking about neocolonialism and the rest of it. The United Nations should be democratized. All the continents should be represented. There should be power locations everywhere. Africans should have a voice. The Middle East should be given a voice. And this is the only way to say we are democratic and we are egalitarian as we claim. So for me, Putin has spoken to the fact. And what is that fact? That the world needs to be safe and everybody's sovereignty needs to be respected, no matter how small they are.
Beyond that, he has actually made his own statements loud and clear, no matter how much of disapproval that, garnered from the whole world. Yes, like you said, he responded to what some would call provocation from the West, really. But then, power dynamics also dictates that those who create chaos are oftentimes the ones who restore order. If you look at the history of apartheid, who started it? The white. Who ended it? The white. Slave trade, who started it? The white. Who ended it? The white. So, tension in Ukraine, who escalated it? Russia. Who is ending it? Russia. So it's
but I'm going to be, you are going to be very clear about this. Russia is not saying that they are going to pull out. What Russia is actually advocating is that the West go out.
But is it possible for the
This
West,
is the issue.
given
The
intention that's actually fueled Ukraine wanting to join NATO? Because Ukraine is still making attempts to join NATO. And if Russia says they respect the sovereignty of countries according to international law, are they going to respect Ukraine's wish to be part of NATO if they meet the conditions?
Yeah, this is the issue. You see, everybody is protecting his stuff. Why is NATO forbidding Putin to come to South Africa so that he would not be arrested.
Did NATO forbid?
Oh, yes.
Putin?
That is why South Africa would not allow him to come. You see, because they know that, because though South Africa is a member of BRICS, they know that if, because of the protocol that has been entered into, if Putin entered the soil of South Africa today, the international police will arrest him for war crime. So why are they doing that? So you see, this is the real issue. So when you look at international power play, you see that everybody is asserting his interest. And if the West or NATO is protecting its backyard, I think they should also give the right to other people to protect their backyard.
So it's a very iffy situation, so to speak. It's conditional.
Yeah.
We just hope that...
we hope that the common sense will prevail, because the whole world is suffering, and I don't really know what is the relevance of military power blocks as at today, and why are we preparing for a third world war. And I think all these blocks that are put together to create conflict and war should actually be demolished, because they have lost their relevance. And what people need at the moment is not war. People need food.
Not to mention that economies of countries are being destroyed, families are being displaced, lives are being lost on a daily because of things like this. The world will be better with peace. Now, moving to financial matters, the Federal Bureau of Intelligence, FBI, has uncovered plans by hackers affiliated with the North Korea-backed Lazarus Group to cash out over $40 million in stolen funds through 6 Bitcoin addresses. The Bureau has issued a warning to cryptocurrency companies to be cautious when dealing with transactions linked to these addresses. Now, I think this is also a warning to people who trade with Bitcoin to be very careful of the transactions that they make, because it's not just in the warning shouldn't just go to the companies, but I think it's a wake-up call for everyone to be very careful of dealings that they make when they are trading on such platforms.
Yes, you're right about that. The debate about the arrival of Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies is neither here nor there. While some are advocating strongly that we should have a decentralized financial system, which is the whole idea of the cryptocurrency, some are saying that the risks involved are just too high for us to begin to entertain it fully at this point in time. That there should be a form of regulation, even in a deregulated financial market that we are advocating. So it's huge. Now, let's not forget that there is no policeman, so to speak, that can actually save you if you fall prey to hackers who can wipe your entire investment in just one click of a button. So this is why where the argument becomes a bit dicey for me. We want a decentralized financial system worldwide where you can trade fairly, but then at the same time there are people that need to watch your back, and if you don't submit your dealings to some kind of central authority, it becomes difficult for somebody to watch your back. That is where it becomes a bit dicey for me to talk about the house.
Well, I agree with you completely. For me, I have really I've been suspicious of the crypto world, because a system that is not oversighted, and you don't even know who the key players are, who is setting up the system. And what do you do when the system crashes? So for me, the security is very low, because anything can happen. Even a system crash or a system, damage, a lot can happen. We can't really tell. So for me, we have to tread very carefully in looking at the future of cryptocurrency, because a whole lot is not right. But you see, when some people who are no state actors and are very powerful promotes an idea, it looks very genuine. And we see those big boys putting money in cryptocurrency, and almost everybody is following suit. And one day they put in their resources because they know what's happening, and the rest of us do not know. Because at the end of the day, you see, these capitalists, they profit at the expense of the very poor people. So I think to be forewarned
is to be forearmed.
Is to be forearmed, as they say.
All right, moving now to health. Surgeons in Oxford have successfully performed the UK's first womb transplant. The recipient is a 34-year-old woman with a rare condition, and a 40-year-old sister served as the donor. I think this is very great news for the health sector globally. It will bring a lot of respite to women who have fertility issues, and it's just something that I think we should have more of success stories like this in other nations, because if it's just only some countries in the West, then it makes it a very, very expensive procedure, and it will be out of the reach of a lot of persons.
Well, I had wished that there were Nigerian doctors that did that fit also. For me, really, I thought that we were going to even look at the FAC allocation account as the thing is spreading, where we cannot even, we keep talking about there's no fund, no fund. I looked at the figures as they reeled them out this morning. You have federal government taking about 370 billion, state government taking up to 330 billion, local government about 200 and something billion, 51 billion for oil producing regions. All this money is going, and we are not putting anything into health, so that we can also pioneer some research that will bring people in here. And I think responsible use of resources for me as a people is also something to speak about. While we celebrate what is happening in Oxford, I think we should also encourage University of Ibadan, University of Lagos, Ife, to Nnamdi Azikiwe, ABU, to break ground in some other areas, so that the world can also be talking about it. I think that's where we should be. We should not just be clapping for the people who are sleeping inside the room while we are on the bed outside catching cold.
I agree with you on that, Idausa. But beyond, making commitment to break new grounds, the little grounds we have broken, what have we done with them? With due respect to, the federal government, these researchers in our schools that you mentioned are doing their own bit within the confines of the available resources that they have. There are small research outputs that have been made, but then to move from the paper to the point of implementation, that is where the political will is lacking. So maybe perhaps some of these funds that have been allocated should be given back to the schools.
Maybe you have information we don't have.
No,
you see, because when
you go to IITA, for instance, in agriculture, they are maybe not as groundbreaking as womb transplant. There are pockets of innovation that are coming out from that place. But then, what is the amount of money allocated to even communicate this to the masses, to the farmers who need them? I am speaking to that particular angle.
You see, what you should realize is that there's no breaking any ground. We are only adopting and adapting to what people have done elsewhere. My own view is that we need people who are going to break new ground that the world will follow.
Now, when it comes to breaking ground in the health sector, doesn't technology have a role to play in
We have to develop technology. Must it be that the West that develop technology? We are having people who are studying technology. Can't we break ground in technology? This is the argument. If we must move out from slavery, then we must do something that the West will have to follow us, so that they can become the new slave, while we become the new slave owners.
That seems like a very tall order.
It's a tall order, but it's achievable.
Okay. A tall order, but achievable. So it is time for everyone to get back, and if we have to go back to the books, maybe rewrite the book that will help us to achieve that tall order, then that's what we need to do if we must change the narrative from being the followers to becoming the leaders. It is doable. It's just for us to get it right and know what exactly to do. We're going to break and now after the break, we'll begin to look at the issues for discuss today. The banking sector is our focus, so you have a clue already. After the break, we'll talk.
In an increasingly interconnected world, for businesses to innovate, grow, and succeed in entrepreneurial environment, the need for readily available financial services becomes a key requirement. At the forefront of these are traditional banks, point-of-sale system POS, and financial technology companies, fintech. While point-of-sale system involves combination of hardware and software used to facilitate financial transactions, financial technology companies, fintechs, leverage technology to create new and improved financial products to transform the traditional financial industry. Driven by effort to promote cashless transactions and financial inclusion even to the rural dwellers, POS system was introduced into Nigeria in 2013 by the former CBN governor, Sanusi Lamido Sanusi. This introduction became a preferred alternative for users of traditional banks as it has helped them to save time and has reduced long queues in banks. According to the Nigeria Interbank Settlement System, NIBSS, as at March 2023, the number of POS terminals deployed by merchants and individuals rose to 1.8 million. Another report from the Central Bank of Nigeria further reveals that as at December 2022, POS transactions across the country hit over 40 trillion. Isn't that incredible? Respondents speaks to what motivates them to choose POS systems over visiting traditional banks for their transactions.
I like patronizing POS operator because their one will be quick and sharp and number one, when you get there, no queue, no wasting of time. So I prefer patronizing POS than going to the bank because the process of the bank will take long time.
But I prefer POS because POS is everywhere, like they are everywhere, let me put it that way. So I actually prefer them. You won't have to stress yourself, you have to, you just go nearby and that's just it.
However, POS usage also comes with its own challenges, some of which are frequent network failures, resulting in failed transactions and delays in money reversal, security issues like fraudulent machines and high transaction fees. A lot of Nigerians have not forgotten the exploitative practices they had to endure during the cash crunch period early this year. Furthermore, traditional banks are also not exempted from the multiple charges as complained by different individuals.
But most of the time when I send money to somebody through POS, they used to give complaint that maybe the money is not delivered or something like that.
I prefer going to bank. Even when I want to do transfer, I prefer using ATM machine instead of POS.
To navigate these challenges, banks and fintech companies should synergize to improve the POS system experience like reliability, security, affordability, and accessibility. These can be done through measures such as collaborating with network providers, investing in cybersecurity, offering incentives, and training of staff. Israel Adeyemi, Sook News.
You just watched the report on point of sales machine. So we're looking at the roles of point of sales operators, the POS operators in banking experience. Now they've actually bridged the gap and come to make banking or making payments very convenient. These days, people just walk into a shop without actually having cash with them and not even making transfers. When you're done making purchases, all they need to do is to give the card to the salesperson and say, run my card, and then they make payment easily. But what are some of the issues with doing that? Even for making cash withdrawals, at different parts of town, you get to see one POS stand or the other where you can make withdrawals and get some cash. You can also send money to people without having to go to the bank, and that has in a lot of ways decongested the banking halls and taken away the stress of trying to meet up with time, because if you get to the bank later than 4 p.m. in Nigeria, and I guess in a lot of countries, you will not be able to have access into the banking hall. But that provides banking service outside of the bank all day of the week and even on weekends, and for longer times of the day. What are the challenges with having access to this service, and what are some of the benefits that it has brought in to the financial sector? These are some of the issues we'll look at as we talk with Alhaji Abidin Adeniyi, the CEO of Golden Bidmont International Limited, who will be joining us on Zoom pretty soon. But I have used POS a lot of times. I too have used POS. What have been your experience using POS?
Well, largely it's been very positive for me, except when they became like demigods during the last cash crunch.
Yes.
POS people became demigods, and their words were law that you neither queried nor varied. Who were you to really question them?
Did you have an option?
You had no option at that point in time. Now, the cash crunch experience, for me, it was hellish. Yes. They were also going through a lot of hurdles to secure the little cash they were able to secure, but at what cost to them? What was the rate at which they got those cash from, and what was the rate being given to us? You would want to collect 5,000 naira. Your own money, you pay 1,000 naira. Now,
that was minimal.
But really,
because it became worse. I think the 1,000 naira charge for the withdrawal of 5,000 naira was at the initial stage. It got worse. It got to the point people were making withdrawal of 5,000 at a charge of 1,500 naira.
Now, eventually, we began to breathe a sigh of relief. And that makes me realize that nothing lasts forever. All the empires in the world will crash at some point, except the empire of the
POS empire did crash.
Yes, the POS empire did crash.
Cash crunch expired.
But then that is not to take away from them the value that they contribute to the society. Okay, are you talking about the empowerment, the employment opportunities? A lot of young people are into this POS, and trust me, hey, don't be fooled by these umbrellas that you see. But under those umbrellas, they are making a lot of money. We know people who have 5, 6, 7 stands in the parts of the town, and they can even pay some people's salary in some other companies.
Yes,
so that is huge on their part.
And it also depends on where they're located. For those that are located in areas where a lot of financial transactions happen, and you do not really have banks within those areas, it's always cash out season for them. But it doesn't come without some attendant risk, because at a time they seem to be the targets of robbers, because a lot of them were often attacked because they carry cash with them. So some deployed some strategies at that point. I would not want to mention the strategies that they deployed to avoid being targeted at that particular time. So as much as it has created employment, it also comes with a lot of risk. And some of the risks that some of them suffer happens when there are failed transactions. Somebody makes a payment, or you run a card for someone, and then it seems to be successful, but the money has not actually been transferred to the account of the POS operator. And at the time they're actually running accounts at the end of the day, they find that there are some monies have not got into the account, things like that, failed transaction from the part of the customer. Maybe you also need to wait for the POS person to be sure that they have gotten alerted.
That is
some technological issues.
It's inefficiency on the part of the middleman. When I say middleman now, the banks that are that are behind. Is it fintech now, or even the regular bank? The fact is this: somebody was doing an analysis that elsewhere in the world, if you slot in your ATM card into a POS machine, before they debit you, the money is withheld somewhere in the cloud, in between the person using the POS and the account. Now you withhold it temporarily, digitally speaking, and at a particular point, once all the glitches are taken care of, you don't get debited before resolution of the glitches. But what we do here in this part of the world is get the person debited first. So the bank's interest first, regardless of whether you have been able to conclude the transaction or the order, which is something they can really correct easily if they want to do that. So it's on the part of of the middleman in between the POS operator and the one who is deploying this service in the first place. But then, if you ever stumble on a scene where a customer is attacking, maybe verbally, a POS operator, you will pity these POS operators, because, well, it's not their fault anyway. but then they get to suffer it.
Yes, because you're the one the customer can see. At that point in time, the customer cannot see the banks. Neither can the customer see the fintech company that provide the service. So it's you they see. You're the one they will unleash whatever anger that they have. But another thing that discourages the use of POS by customers is the charges, because the POS operators sometimes complain of the charges that come to them from the use of the POS, and they want to pass on the cost of the charge to the customer. Some of them will tell you that, oh, if you're paying, maybe for those who use them for payment of goods and services in a shop or a business center, if you're going to pay through POS, then you must add the charge that they will receive from allowing you to use the POS. And some customers will decline. But for some of them, because they want to retain the customer and they want to secure patronage, they will say, okay, go ahead. And that also becomes a deduction in their profit. So these are some of the issues that POS operations have faced in the over the number of years that we've had them around. Okay, but notwithstanding, they've actually provided lots of benefits.
Speaking to the cost of transactions, essentially, I know that every financial transaction that is deployed at that level, there's a particular cost that is associated with it. But then I did a bit of research. The amount of, or let me say, the cost that is being levied on the owner of the POS machine itself is not as much as they make you believe. We have people who are running this business, really. And we have an idea of how much the banks charge them for the use of POS. What they transfer to you, the final consumer, is not commensurate with the charges that are being removed from them. Of course, for them it is a business and you want to make more profit than what you're investing. But then, I still believe it is not a fair practice on their part because they are not paying as highly as they are charging you customers. That is not just something somebody told me. I found out from simple research.
But that is business, because when it comes to business, once a person is or a business person is incurring some cost, they find a way to pass it on to the customer, and in passing it on, they also multiply so they can benefit from it. So that is one thing. But regulation has a role to play. A while ago, some POS operators were talking about increasing the charge that is going to apply to transactions. And in some states, I think they actually started that. But whether it's nationwide, I do not know. But one thing that's actually even checked them is the reactions of customers after the cash crunch thing, because a lot of persons have reduced the use of POS operators. So that too became like a check. But more than that, there is need for regulation. Because where the charge for maybe a withdrawal of 5,000 naira was 100 naira, and then they come together to say, oh no, it has to be 200 naira now because they have to factor in the charges and also other economic changes that have increased costs, then some form of regulation should check them. And at that point, the FCCPC waded in on behalf of the customers to say you cannot just increase charges, making financial transactions very expensive. And
some of the excuses they will give you are very lame. They will tell you, after all, subsidy has been removed on fuel, and that's why charges on POS, went up. I don't get this explanation, this argument. What does subsidy removal have to do with POS charges? For God's sake.
Well, it has everything to do with it. You see,
not directly like that.
Yeah, it may not be direct, but there are indirect kind of connections. So it's like a ripple effect. When you drop an object into the middle of the water, you see the ripple gets to the bank of the river. So what happened is that the POS person is also struggling to pay for services that fuel increases has brought about. And since he has no other source of income, and the only way to be able to generate revenue to buy the goods that is coming from the farm that is carried by expensive petrol, he will need to up his game to be able to meet up. And I think that's just a response that is natural. But that said, it's also to say that sometimes as a people, we are too opportunistic. Exactly. We take advantage unduly of each other, which is not the best way to live. And I think this is where the problem actually lies. You see, for me, POS should be part of service that bankers are rendering to their customers. And I think that should have sufficed. Elsewhere, what people do with POS is actually not to dispense cash. It's actually to help trade. Put them in shops so that when people come to buy, rather than dispense cash, of course, they use their card and swipe. And this is how,
also.
Yes, of course, that is here. But of course, we have made a trade out of it. And this is where the charges are coming off from. That the bank is taking some charges, the operator is taking some charges. And this, of course, is at the expense of one person who is a bank customer. So he loses at both ends, which should really not be.
Now, one issue too that I find a serious one that I think the banks have not found a way to actually come into some form of close collaboration with the POS operators to make it easy is dispute resolution. You go to a shop, for instance, and then you try to make payments. Maybe it is declined, but you got debited. At that point, you now have to go to your bank to resolve the issue. And sometimes it takes a long process. Or you have to go to the bank, fill a form, wait for some number of days before that is reverted. So if you are giving a machine to the POS operator, when there are disputes like that, why can't there be a process in place where you fill the form right there at the POS center, and then maybe the POS operator have a way of submitting that to the banks, and instantly, maybe a day or two, it is resolved, instead of the customer having to go to the bank and then begin the process to all over again. So sometimes these are things that discourage the use of POS, particularly when they just even tell you, oh, they're having network issues. You don't even want to try, so you don't come into such problems.
Yeah, but you know, like in the ICT, you have both end, back end and front end.
Definitely.
Now, the POS people have access only to the front end, so they don't have access to the back end. So in terms of dispute resolution, it would be very difficult for a bank to give them wholesale access to the entire practice. So that's why when you have these things happen, when there's disputes, it's easier for the bank to be able to find out what really happened, if the transaction was concluded. Otherwise, if you leave that door and window open, a lot of spurious claims will come. Because a lot of people will say, oh, I didn't get money and I was debited and all of that. So the bank has to verify, since the POS people have no means to verifying whether those transactions was actually concluded successfully or was not concluded successfully. So, but most of the time, there's also automated process of refund if there are declined transactions, and those are also programmed, except that where you have issues of network glitches and the rest of it.
I think this is the place of customer education in all of this. A lot of us don't know what the process looks like. To you, of course, you've been debited. To you, the POS man or woman is trying to defraud you. After all, you can see the debit alert on your phone. And you're even showing the person, okay, this is the debit alert that I have on my phone. And to him as well, he has not, I mean, the money has not entered his own account.
Or so the printout is actually showing the client transaction.
But then, if the banks or the regulatory authorities are able to educate the consumer, this one, let us make the process seamless. I agree with you. You can't give everybody access to the back end when it comes to money. People will always take advantage of that. But then, even as at that, let us educate everybody. Okay, you have to wait this number of days and do this and do this and do this. But then, we are always impatient when it comes to money. Your money just left your account and you can't have it, and you don't want to wait for 72 hours or 48 hours, within which they should have probably resolved it. But I think of recent, it has changed. It has changed. I've had to make some transactions that said I was debited, and before I could even finish complaining, my money was reverted, really.
Those automated processes are in place. But I think what the real issues are is that sometimes a lot of us are also very impatient. There's so much anger in the streets, and people have 500 naira left in the account, and then there's a decline, and you can see the whole anger because the person wants to eat, and there's no alternative. But I think these are really issues. But I think in terms of a response time from the banks, they're actually doing very well, because there are also other platforms to which, of course, you can reach the bank. I remember the last time I had such an experience, all I needed to do was just to send a WhatsApp bank message to my bank, and in less than 2 hours, there was a reversal. So there's a whole lot of platform through which people can reach out to their bank. You don't need to physically be in your bank. There are email services. There are even ITM, interactive teller machines, where you can actually walk into the front of a bank and you make some input and do your complaint, and then you walk back home. So all these platforms are in operation, and it's just for us as customers to also take advantage of the platforms that are made available to resolve some of these conflicts and disputes that arise from transactions.
All right, we're still looking at banking experience. After the break, we'll continue. Stay tuned.
Thank you for staying tuned. We're still taking a look at the issues, the challenges, the benefits of using point of sale services in Nigeria. Of course, they have actually promoted what is known as financial inclusivity. A lot of people a lot of unbanked people, or maybe who were hitherto unbanked and are now banked, courtesy of being able to access some of these facilities, especially in the rural areas. How many banks do we have in the rural areas, for instance? In my village, how many banks do we have there, if we have any at all at this point in time? Because it's been a while we've been there. But then, everywhere you go, you see one POS operator. Even in our local markets, they are there. At every 5 minutes walk, you must see one POS operator or the other. And that is promoting financial inclusion. Let's not forget that that has its own potential also, to boost the economy of our country, Nigeria. And I spoke earlier about the employment opportunities being created for young people. Of course, now, the issue of network downtime is very, very big. That's what causes a lot of this dispute that we spoke to earlier. But then our telcos are also doing their best to up their games to ensure that we have little network glitches. Of course, we may not be able to have it eradicated 100% because there is no fail-safe system anywhere in the world. But then it's all about the frequency of downtime that we have is getting reduced, and we must give kudos to our telcos for that. Listen.
Yes, we appreciate that there's been an improvement, but there's still room for more improvement, because where you can actually have that confidence that whenever you need to make use of a POS, you have the internet to support it, and it's going to be a successful transaction that will encourage. But where it doesn't happen and people have to resort to trying to get cash, then it defeats the purpose and it reduces the volume of transaction that the POS operator can actually have, because it's based on volume. The more transaction you have, that increases the profit that you can make. So we need a dependable system that is, even if we will have some failed transactions, also some downtime in terms of the network, but it shouldn't be something that is a frequent occurrence. But it also depends on the area. There are areas where you hardly find things like that. In the rural areas, you could find more cases of network downtime, maybe because of the non-availability of the structure to support the network in that area. But in the urban areas, you'll find that people can actually make a lot of POS transactions and it just goes successfully. So this is some of the things that the telcos that provide the network should actually improve upon, because it is business. So people need to be able to do business.
It also
more
was
often.
talking about our cash dependency as a people. We are still largely a cash-backed, a cash-based economy. I wouldn't know why that is, because some would say that the cash crunch we experience, though not desirable, should have been a launchpad for us to go as cashless as possible. But we all celebrated the arrival of cash back in our hands, even though we now had, we now have access to our fund. What do we do as a people to depend less on cash? Because going about with cash comes with its own risk in the first place.
Oh, yeah.
So what do we do? How do we improve, this cashless initiative? How do we do it as a people? Maybe not from the government stand now. I mean, from us, what needs to change in our thinking so we can go as cashless as possible? Because we saw an opportunity and we did not take it. We did not.
Yeah, but you see, I think the real issue is also a lot of orientations that we need to do, talking to our customers and the people who are not within the net of the bankers at the moment. Some African countries had actually also pioneered innovation in this area, which is mobile banking and transfer, that people can actually do direct code and then money is sent from one person to the other. And I think we also need to encourage that a lot, rather than this over-dependence and reliance on cash. Yes, money is the store of value, and people want to see and count it in their hands. But and some people don't feel it's their money when it is in the bank, so they want to have it. And they then also forget that there are also some cultures around us here where people are also afraid to keep money, especially in the commercial bank. And this is one incentive that's actually fueling the drive for cash, because there are some religions that don't want to see money, especially in the commercial banks, because they don't believe in interest giving and investment in certain practices that may be contrary to religious practice. So this is also a problem that we will need to deal with. So people want to be sure where their money is kept and that the money is used rightly for what they believe or what their faith do support.
All right. Now, we've talked about how it takes a long time sometimes for disputes to be resolved when there are failed transactions. But what are the obligations of the customer in ensuring that it takes less time and the bankers can actually offer the service that we need? Sometimes people in opening the account provide information that are not correct, and at the point of dispute resolution, it becomes a problem. How do we change that, or even begin to be more conscious of what we do, the information we supply?
Yeah, I think that's a fundamental problem. We've had to deal with that even in our office here, because a lot of people go to bank with different identities. And so you have to now confirm whether you are the person or not the person. Sometimes people supply wrong date of birth and the rest of it. Sometimes people are using multiple names. They don't know which one is their surname. They don't know which one is the first name. Now, this requires a whole lot of enlightenment that had to be done by the banker, so that at the point of completing forms, there should be people who should guide and ensure that people have the necessary documentations that they need to supply to give these details to the bank. Because at the end of the day, when your informations are not correct, then of course the chances of resolving your crisis become real, have to take some bit of time. But again, it's also to speak to customers too, that of course the bankers are also human beings. We know customers are king. These people are also human beings trying to respond to your issue, because everybody wants it done right and now. And then of course they don't even want the process to be observed. And I think we should also be process people to understand that sometimes it takes some certain things for a lot of things to verify. It's just like online trading. Now, if you buy something online, and then, of course, you have to do a refund, you know that because the person who is housing your cash or connecting you to your real customer is having to also be sure and giving like 7 days window before cash is transferred. to the person who sold to you. So all this takes some processes. And I think we should be a little bit patient with our bankers also, so that we will not put them under pressure and break processes and systems.
We will go back to the roles and the obligations of customers in promoting a very good customer experience at somewhere. But we have standing by via Zoom to speak on the issue of POS operators and their place in, in promoting a very good customer experience. We have Abidin Adeniyi, the CEO of Golden Bidmouth International Limited. Abidin, good morning. Good morning, sir. Thank you for joining us. Yes. I am tempted to use our local parlance here. You are a POS operator, and we know the roles that POS operators played during the cash crunch. We know how business boomed massively. But if I may ask, how market now?
Yeah, market is good. We are not doing badly. Thank God for everything. And then, gradually everything is moving. Then we are getting used to it.
Okay, thank you. I'm glad to hear that market is still booming, and we're thanking God, and we even have further reasons to thank God. But then let's talk business now. We know that the arrival of the POS into the financial sector in Nigeria has been has done a lot of good to us as a people. But let us speak to the challenges that you are facing as an operator. We actually spoke about some before you came, but let's hear from the horse's mouth now. What challenges are you facing as a POS business operator in Nigeria? Let's start from there.
Good. The major challenge out of all the challenges is connectivity. That is network connectivity. You know that one, the operators, we have to pay about it. It all depends on our network provider and then the bank itself. In most cases, but of recent, things are getting improved, especially with some banks like First Bank and then Bank, Access Bank, they're getting better. Then, money points of recent, they have come in, and then they are making a lot of difference. So in terms of network, that is only the major problem we encounter in most cases. But things are getting improved gradually. I have to be proud of that. And it also depends on your area. It's not only the bank. The network issue doesn't only, it's not only the bank issue. At times it might be from a network provider like MTN or all the stuff. So that is the issue. But the major problem is the network connectivity.
Okay, in the transactions that you do, we know that a lot of persons use POS for cash withdrawal more than they use it to pay for services in business centers. So what's the charges like now? It used to be, before the cash crunch, 100 naira for any withdrawal between 1,000 naira and 5,000 naira, and 200 naira for any transaction above 5,000 naira, but not more than 10,000 naira. But what is it like right now? Some time ago, your association was talking about increasing the charges. How is that now?
Yeah, presently, generally accepted charges for the POS operators from 100 naira. If you are withdrawing from 100 naira to 5,000, the charges still remain 100 naira. Anything above, over and above 5,000, up to 10,000 is going to be 200 naira. So for every 10,000 you are withdrawing, just have it in mind that you are paying 200. So when it comes to 20,000, then you are paying 400. 30,000, you are paying 600 naira. So for every 1,000, for every 10,000, you are paying 200 naira as commission to do it.
All right. Still on the issue of charges, some of us believe, I want to say, some of customers of POS services believe that you are charging too much. Because we did a little research and we realized that you are not probably paying as much as that. Of course, nobody will expect you to pay as much to the banks as you pay, as we pay to you. But then we look at the ratio. They say the charges from the banks are very minimal as compared to what you are charging us. Would you say that is a correct point of view, or is just an assumption on our part? Please?
It's not very correct.
But
When you
it
look
is
at
slightly
it,
correct, not very
bank
correct.
itself, for every withdrawal we make, bank have their own charges.
I know.
Even though it's not much. Like what they are charging now, they charge us 5 per mil, as in 0.00% on every withdrawal you make. That is 5 per mil. For every 1,000, they charge you 5. So if they are charging us like that, and then they are not providing us with unnecessary materials like before, like when we started newly, like 5, 6, 7 years back, the bank used to provide printing papers, used to provide, at times some banks, like now, mobile operator, they used to even give us a recharge card. They give us data for our operation. All this one makes our charges to come down. But of recent, banks, they stopped giving out data to US operators. And then the printing papers, all other materials that we need, we have to purchase it on our own. So they are not giving us all these things like before. So all these things, put them together, makes our charges to be a bit higher. But it's not all that if you look at the present situation of the country, at least everything that don't know the cost of transportation. At times, some of the they live, they are working, the office is far from the bank. They are transportation from to and fro to the bank and coming back to the office might cost them like maybe 400 naira minimum now. Because the minimum charge for transportation is 200 naira. So going and coming back can cost them like 400 naira. So if they are incurring this cost, they have to find a way to back. That is the major. That's the reason why charges have to stabilize. It is a normal interplay of demand and supply. We're trying to hike it some areas. Some areas you see 200 naira, 10,000. They are collecting 300, 400 before. But now it has stabilized. The interplay of demand and supply has stabilized everything. At the normal price now, the normal cost, the normal charge for every most of the price, 200 naira.
Let's talk about security, because when a customer wants to make use of the POS, they must use their card and enter into their PINs. Now, the way some POS posts are even designed, you have the POS operator in something like a counter. And these days, I've seen that some of them, the POS operator is inside and the machine is with them. So when you give them your card and they are try to make a transaction for you, is with them inside. You're not really seeing what some of them are doing inside. And even when you're entering your details. But what are the measures that are put in place to ensure the protection of the customer's data? Because this is some of the fears that some customers have, that when they use POS, particularly when they use one POS too often, the chances of them having a breach in their accounts in terms of the security is high.
Yeah, thank you very much. I remember the last meeting we had, the operator, all agreed, and then based on that challenges we have, and then on trying to protect the customer's interest as well, we decided that our operators, our attendants, they have to transparent and open. Where they are sitting down now has to be where it is visible. Everybody has to see them. It's even good for ourselves. When they are not sitting outside, where they are visible, it's not safe. The security situation of the country now. If you are putting yourself in a cage, maybe you are putting yourself in a kiosk and then being protected, and then customer is not seeing what you are doing, it's not very good. Well, we have seen some instances like that the attendant might try to play fast game on customers. And at the same time, we have seen situations where customers are also trying to play fast game on operators as well. You can imagine an operator can give a customer a POS terminal that, okay, look, we have typed what you want to withdraw. Maybe you want to withdraw 5,000. I'm charging you 100 naira. I've typed 5,001. Now put your password. Do you know, in the place of giving the terminal out to that customer, some customer will try to even change it to them. They might try to change it to 15,000. And you, if you're not very careful, you just put in your own password. Then it goes. Then you won't even think of checking the figures again, since you were the one that put it initially. Before you know it, you are bringing the 15,000 out instead of 5,000. So it is both sides. The customers are trying to play fast game on the operators, and at the same time, some attendants being hired by the operators, some of them are also bad as well. I also try to play fast game on the customers. But to prevent that, what we do is that what we advise our other members is that try and put your attendance where he or she will be visible to everybody. And whatever he or she is doing should also be visible to the customer as well. The customer has on the card. That is what we are putting in place now. So far, so good. Everything has improved now.
Okay.
It has improved gradually. It's improving gradually now. So that's the situation now.
On the very last note, sir, let me ask how you protect your members as an association, because I do know that we've had instances in the past where people brought ATM cards to conduct transactions, and security operatives traced them down to that place, and then your men probably ended up behind the nets, behind police nets for an offense they never really committed, only that their point of sale was used as part of the chain of transfer of money. How do you protect your people against these innocent infractions that are committed in the line of business?
Thank you very much. This is a very serious challenge for all POS. I'm speaking right now. We have police needs. Someone is saying, only because they happen to have they provided the channel of which they know nothing. So this one has been calling ever since the inception of the POS operation. And then we are trying our best to make sure we have a committee that can be looking into that. Because even me, as one of the pioneers, because I started early as soon as I started POS operation, together with most of the past. In fact, I was a member of the working committee, So
you really are not very audible any longer. It's a pity. We might have to end the interview at this point. There's a glitch at your end there. But thank you very much. I would have loved to answer that question clearly, but then I really can't go on at this point. I must say thank you for coming on the program today to speak about the place of POS operators in promoting financial inclusion. All right, thank you very much. So we'll take a short break now. When we return, we'll look at the role of the core banks, the conventional banks in, promoting or improving customer experience. What has been the experience like going into the banks these days? Stay tuned as we take a break.
All right, now let's look at the role of the conventional banks towards providing financial services and what has been the experience of customers in that regard. Now, we'll have Mr. Ezekiel Agayiri, who is a finance consultant, to talk to us about that. But before we'll bring in Mr. Ezekiel Agayiri, for the traditional banking institution. Now, a lot has changed with time. Before technology made things quite easy, and before the banks too also came up with structures to improve customer experience, it was really a terrible experience for people who need to go to the bank because of the long queues you would find. If you have anything to do at the bank, then you just know that you have to designate that entire day to spend at the bank because of the number of people you will find, you will queue behind, and it takes a whole lot. But these days, that aspect has really changed. Hardly would you get into the banking hall and you find a number of people queued. Sometimes you don't even find any queue. And so that's an aspect of improvement. And then concerning dispute resolution, yes, I think the banks too have improved in that aspect, being more receptive, more courteous, respecting customers, and then also improved in the number of days or the time it takes to resolve dispute. But I am not the one to talk about all of this. Mr. Ezekiel Agayiri is here to talk about that because he's a finance consultant. Good morning, sir. Welcome to the show.
Good morning.
Good morning. We'll need you to speak up a little bit, sir, for the sake of our audience. Good morning once again.
Good morning.
Good. Thank you very much.
Now, talking about the conventional banks, they're there and they're still there. And from what it looks, they're still going to be there, regardless of the fintech that we're having. Now, what's your assessment of their performance over the years? I've talked about some things, but I know you have a lot more to say.
Well, the banks are doing okay. They are raising their standards to meet the customers' demand. And so they're doing okay.
In terms of providing that customer experience that would want one customer to return to a particular bank and say, wow, I like the way my bank serves me, from bank to bank, what's your take?
Well, they have account officers in banks, okay, and those account officers specialize in certain sectors. So when you go to a bank, you have to know if they have the expertise to handle your transaction. If they do, then you stay there, and they help your transaction go through.
Yeah. Okay. Now, we're actually taking a look at the banking experience from the perspective of the customers and what roles the banks are playing in it. Now, one of the factors that worsened the banking experience back then was the long wait time. And even up till today, we still have long wait time for some services. What do you think should be done to improve this? Even though we don't have a lot of people entering the banks, we still have delays that you really can't explain. From your own experience, really, what should banks be doing to reduce the wait time? And I would appreciate you speaking up, sir.
Well, they have to have experts in the field, in different fields. So let's assume I want to do an oil and gas transaction. I walk into a bank. They should immediately introduce me to somebody that specializes in oil and gas, so that my discussion with the bank is going straight to the point rather than going around in circles. Once that is done, then the bank can understand what you need, and they can take over your transaction from there.
Okay, let's take our minds back to the cash crunch. At that time, a lot of persons lost faith in the banking system, particularly with the conventional banks. And it seemed like the bank has a lot to do in terms of redeeming their image. But right now, the cash crunch is over. Some customers, I know of some customers too, that have decided not to continue banking with certain banks. Now, regarding redeeming the image of the bank, what should banks, not necessarily calling out any bank right now, what should the conventional bank do to restore the confidence of customers in them?
Well, if the bank should do the simple things well. And so you realize when you think about the transaction, you think back at the transaction, you realize which bank, you realize where the bank had a strength. You realize the strength was a key area of banking. If it was, then you can go back to them. If it wasn't, then you can look for another bank to use. Or how easy was it to get your transaction done in terms of communicating with the bank? If it was very difficult, you know, not all transactions are not very difficult transactions. All transactions are very easy, you know. But if the bank you went to made things so difficult for you, then you have to look for another bank.
But that's a decision for the customer to make. On the side of the banks themselves, what would need to change? Because when you talk about it depends on the transaction that you're doing, basic transactions that people normally would do with banks, depositing money, making transfers, withdrawing money, having access to cash. And there was widespread failure to a good extent from some banks in that period. So what should change right now to try to win customers back to know, oh, we've improved on this, we've improved on that, we can serve you better?
Well, if, let's assume I'm doing oil and gas, and I go into a bank, the person, my account officer in the bank must know oil and gas. If I go there and I ask a simple question, the account officer doesn't know it, then the bank has failed. It's failed to provide us the necessary service for me to move on with my transaction. So they need to look at if the account officers, they are giving the customers, if they are really, if they know their stuff. If they don't, then they have to get somebody or train or send them for further training.
Okay. Let's look at, you know, customer experience itself. If that phrase is still very valid today, we have gone beyond that really. But then what are the global best practices to have a good customer experience? Let's not forget that we're looking at the place of, you know, the banks in promoting this experience. What should banks do now to, you know, play the global playbook of, you know, profound customer experience?
Well, you want the customer to come back to you.
Definitely.
I want the customer to say you are the best thing that you ever saw. So you have to have account officers that can answer questions, that can take them to the next level of their transaction. Even if the person they introduced to you originally cannot do the transaction, they have to find somebody who can take the transaction to the next level.
Okay, but some customers could be very hard to please, difficult customers. How should customer service, you know, officers or operators, you know, handle difficult customers? Because some customers could be very difficult.
Well, customers, you have to expect that customers will be very difficult. That's your expectation.
Okay. Default expectation.
Yes. You have to expect that the customer is going to ask the hardest questions you ever have been asked and be ready for that. If not, you're not ready for the job.
All right, so let's talk about difficult customers. There are some customers that can throw tantrums in the banking hall when they're not being attended to the way they expect to be attended to. And sometimes you could even find some that are not very literate. So even communicating the process to them is an issue. What are the ways to resolve such issues within the conventional banking system?
Is to put the customer aside and explain your processes to them, because every bank's process is different. So you have to explain your process, how you will get to the end result to the customer. When the customer understands it, the customer should understand it. When the customer understands it, then you can take him to the next level. But just usually what people do is the customer comes in, tells them their problems, and they try to use the bank's processes which might be different than what the customer is used to answer the customer. And that's where the problem usually starts and ends.
Okay, now let's look at technology. Now, apart from having that physical contact with the bank or having a physical bank staff attend to you, where is the place of innovative products that convinces the customer to come back or to stay in the bank or even improve the experience of the bank? Are we doing enough in that aspect, or is a conventional bank doing enough in that aspect, having innovative products?
Well, banks have to find a way to create innovative products. And that's by dealing with customers and finding out what the customers really want. Because customers sometimes don't express what they want. But you have to, if you are able to talk to the customer, you find out what the customer really wants at the end, then you can create a product for the customer.
Are you going to have to start creating products from one customer or the other, or there are ways to study the behavior of the customers that you have generally, and in line with global best practices, come up with products?
Well, I think usually right now, customers demand change from customer to customer. Their demand, their needs are different from customer to customer. If you go to a bank to want something today, he's going to come in and he's going to need something different. So you know that. So you put account officers in positions where they can provide good solutions to the customer's need and fast.
Okay. Now, customers would always talk about hidden charges, while bankers will say, no, there are no hidden charges. Some neutral observers might say, or maybe not hidden charges, maybe not non-communicated charges. Whichever way you want to look at it. What can banks do to eliminate this this trust deficit with respect to charges, whether they are hidden or non-communicated well enough?
Well, I think it's from bank to bank. The bank charges are usually set up straight, but the customer doesn't care about the charges when he's trying to get his transaction done. So that question usually doesn't arise about charges. You just want to get his transaction through the door. Now, what happens is that when the transaction is done, you see all the bank charges. That is when the customer raises their hands and says, no, these charges are too much. How much am I making from the transaction? But what the customer can do is ask the bank or your account officer, what are the charges as you go along? Well, usually the account officer doesn't even know it, because you're coming in, you're a unique individual, you're coming in with a unique demand to do a transaction. You don't even know all the charges the bank can charge a customer in your head, carrying it around. It's only when the transaction is done that the FinCon, that the Financial Control Department will now say, okay, the transaction you did yesterday, XYZ, it's 10 kobo, it's 20 kobo, it's 10 naira. Then that's when the charges come up. But hopefully it's not bigger than your transaction.
All right, we'll continue with the conversation after this break. Stay tuned. Thanks for staying tuned. We're looking at the conventional banks and the experience, how the banks can also improve customer experience. All right, Mr. Agayeri, what are the challenges that you think the conventional banking system is dealing with that hinders quality, or that makes it impossible sometimes for them to provide customers with quality experience? Are there certain challenges that hinders that?
Well, it's still the customer. It's still the customer. How do you, the customer doesn't clearly define what they want from the bank. If you define what you want from the bank from day one, the bank knows that they can do it or can't do it. Then if they can't do it, they tell you they can't do it and you move on. But the customer, him or herself, doesn't understand what he or she wants from the bank. That's the problem. When you go into a bank, most of the time, the customer doesn't really know what he or she wants. And that's what creates a problem.
So what is then the duty of the bank towards providing financial literacy so the customer can understand what they should want or what they want and explain it better for the bank to serve them?
I think it's still, the responsibility is still on the side of the bank. It's still on the side of the bank for the bank to understand what the customer wants and then see if they can provide a solution.
Okay, so she spoke earlier about innovation in banking services. What about innovation in communication? Because the bulk of this, boils down to not being innovative enough with communication. You said earlier in your submission that the customer doesn't care about the cost of transaction at the point of enjoying a particular service. It's only when the cost comes that you begin to ask questions. How should banks innovate their communication channels or protocols such that before you take up a service as a customer, you really can't miss that information? What should they do?
Well, I think banks are scared that if you come with a transaction and they tell you there are charges up front, you might not want to use them. So they will not tell you all their charges. It's somewhere along the line, they will tell you that, oh, you have to add A, you have to add B, you have to add C to it. When you add B, A, B, C to it, the cost goes up. But really, I'm not sure the banks will want to change how they do things because they want the customers to come to them. They want the bit income that the customer, that the transaction will pay them. Then afterwards, they start charging you an arm and a leg.
All right, let's look at the rural areas that seem to be underserved. What can be done to improve the accessibility to financial services in that area?
Well, they should set up microfinance banks in those small areas, and the banks, and that's the cost to the bank. The bank should see how they can transfer all their transactions to their head office so that their head office can have a total of everything they want to see. So they have a bigger picture of who their customers are.
Okay. Now, you spoke about banking being setting up microfinance banks being a cost to the bank. There is this argument in the public space that is banking meant to be a cost or a way of life? Because if we see it as a cost, really, they will begin to attach some other legs to it that really will not help the customer experience. But can banking be deployed such that it is seen first and foremost as a way of life to the customer itself? Then that makes the talk of financial inclusivity easier even for banks. Is banking meant to be a cost to you or a way of life?
Well, I think at a certain point, you make banking a way of life because you need money to do everything, and banks have the money. Okay, so it has to be a way of life, and you can't look at it as the cost. You know, you can't look at it as a cost. You know, and you have to make it a way of life.
Let's look at cost of transaction. It's saying over time the cost of transaction has increased, and customers complain about this a lot of time. But it also differs from one bank to the other. But the reason the banks give for the increase in cost of transaction is the cost of fund. How do we tackle that? How would the financial system tackle the cost of fund that is also increasing the cost of transaction?
Well, the cost of funds is the money that the customer brings into the bank for deposit. Okay, so the bank have to reduce the money they are paying out to customers so that they can give back out to customers in terms of assets, in terms of liabilities. Okay, and after that is done, you can talk about reducing. You can talk about reducing the cost, because the money that the customer will get as loans is the money that they brought into the bank as deposits. So the bank has to make it a point to get low deposits so they can give back to the customer at a lower cost.
Okay, what I was actually referring to is the cost of getting funds, securing funds that the banks sometimes talk about. The banks bank with the central bank, and in moving cash, they deploy security. They also have vehicles, the bullion vans that go with them. All of this, the bank also calculates and then transfer to the customers when the customer have to secure funds from them, whether withdrawals or through other channels. So how can the banking system, the financial system handle this, reducing the cost of fund that the bank incurs, so it also reduces the cost of transactions? Because when customers complain of charges, this is what they tell you: oh, the cost of fund is this, it doesn't increase, so therefore customers have to pay charges.
The charges are necessary because money has to be moved around to get to the customer. So you need to you need to charge the customer and see how you can make the charges low. That's all you can do in the banking.
All right. Thank you very much. We must say a very big thank you to you, Mr. Ezekiel Akayere, for speaking to the role of core banking institutions in promoting a good customer experience. Thank you for coming once again. All right, we are still talking banking, and we take a very short break. Now, when we return, then we look at something else, the fintech and the role they play in promoting a very good customer experience for you and for us here. Don't go anywhere. Thank you. Thank you for staying tuned to Early Exchange. And we're still looking at banking and the customer experience. Before the arrival of fintech into the Nigerian banking sector, banking wasn't as much fun as it used to be. Or let me say, it wasn't as easy as it is these days. But today, as of July, we have an estimate of between 200 and 300 fintech companies in Nigeria. I stand to be corrected on that. And nobody can really do without fintech companies in Nigeria as we speak. Before now, the question was, what is fintech? But now, the question is, what is not fintech? And that is how I established this particular lap of the program, as I have with me once again on this show, Mujib Ishola, the GCTO Remita. Good morning. You were described as the man with multiple shares that is deceiving us. Let's say that earlier.
Yes. You know, the last time you were here, we talked about the tech guys being the big boys, and then they just come looking so simple.
So simple.
We're not deceived.
We're not deceived. Really. All right. So let's look at fintech and how your arrival, fintech's arrival has, transformed the customer experience for us. Could you just speak to this? In what way have you, changed the game for us and made it more enjoyable, made banking more enjoyable for us?
Good morning, guys. Essentially, it's about 24/7 service. That's what fintech provides. It's about the convenience, it's about the efficiency, and then somewhere in there is about cost as well. But ultimately, it is driving financial services through technology, making it more convenient, meaning you could sit down at home, without a mobile app or anything and still power your transactions. And ultimately, it's also about driving economic inclusion, right, through technology. So essentially, that's what it is.
So what are some of the products that fintech has brought up, innovations that have helped the financial system?
Innovations will be things like communication, taking advantage of all the communication technology available, WhatsApp, instant messaging, and the rest of it to engage customers. So engagement of customers first. And the speed at which transactions are happening these days, it's another thing that fintechs keep innovating on. Access to the platform as well is easier, and that is done through automating most of the processes, especially the onboarding processes, the KYC processes, and ultimately the transaction processes as well. So all those innovations through technology are the things that fintechs are improving upon daily to make this happen.
Okay, so when we talk about financial inclusion, it's still a big phrase for some people. But we know that the fintech is playing a very big role in promoting this financial inclusion. Could you just explain more to us? How are you promoting or enhancing financial inclusion as fintech operators?
Okay, again, financial inclusion, it's part of the economic inclusion drive. I usually don't like talking about financial inclusion without economic inclusion, right? Okay. Financial inclusion just brings more customers onto the scene. So fintechs are providing product easier to people where they are. If you think about the segmentation, we refer to as unbanked, right? Fintechs are actually breaking down the barriers to getting them into the system through financial inclusion.
Okay.
We're in the day of artificial intelligence, AI. So what role is AI playing in the fintech industry?
Okay, again, AI is not new. It's been around for too long. It just happens that the technology, again, has evolved to the point where we're now talking about it. Same way we started talking about mobile phones and digital communications a while back. Now, the role is broken down into a lot of things, right? We're talking about even customer engagement. These days, you have systems that are learning from conversations you're having with customer success agents, right? Meaning that they could detect when there's a problem, maybe there's a fraudulent situation. They could detect that from just a conversation plugged into machine learning and AI. In terms of fraud management, that's also there, picking up the different aspects of transaction processing that might lead to loss of funds or compromise of a profile, and just too many things, right? So AI and machine learning together are making things faster. If you think transaction processing were faster before now, they're about to even get faster.
Oh, really? Yeah, that would be good to experience. Really. Now, let's look at loan processing, the traditional banking way and the fintech way. What's the major difference there, and where should we, tilt?
Well, you tilt where is more comfortable for you, right?
So what's the difference now?
Okay, so the difference is about the automation of the processes, right? Today, I still had some conversations last week where getting a loan, you had to bring a ton of documents to getting loans. Yes, it's getting better, right? But think of it as automating all the process from customers discovering the loan product, to customer acquisition, to scoring, underwriting, disbursing, collection, and a whole other things that happens within the loan space. So automating of this processes is number one key difference. And aside from that, again, customers discovering this product, sometimes, you have to go somewhere, talk to somebody, then the whole process is long. And usually anybody looking for a loan, especially where loans are more impactful, are the micro lending, which means that people are using this money either to solve immediate problems or trade, which contributes to the economic inclusion I've been talking about. So automating the processes, right, so that customers can discover this product and get access to them where eligible faster is the key difference.
All right, with fintech, it's more about automated processes. But in resolving real-time issues, maybe dispute resolutions, or even providing certain products, is there a need to provide that personal interface for the customers as we see in the conventional banking system?
That's what fintech thrives on, providing tailor-made solutions to customers. Now, dispute, if I say define dispute, right, we'll have 1,001 definitions for it, right? But there's just one. Dispute is a transaction that has not either gotten to its destination or has a problem that you need resolving. In terms of resolution, 1,001 things happen in between those processes. Yes, we've automated a lot of them, but imagine somebody calling a bank and say, hey, the money I tried to transfer didn't get to the beneficiary, and they automatically give you the money back without checking anything, without going through any processes to confirm and, get confirmation that actually there's actually a problem. There will be chaos everywhere. So there's need for interface, but those interface is what fintechs strive on. If you go on any fintech platform these days, you could have a conversation, right, using chat. That's an interface. If it's just that we need to get to the point where we begin trusting the system more, and that's on both sides, fintech providers and the customers as well. The conversation you're going to have on a chat is not going to be different to conversation you're going to have to the human. The only difference is that empathy doesn't come through in chat, and usually that goes a long way, but that is equally getting better, right? So there's a need for interfaces, and that's what fintech strive on by creating dedicated solutions for customers.
I, for one, would tell you that some people are missing those smiles that real bankers provide when we enter the banking hall. I must say that, and there is no equivalence for those heartwarming smiles that we have when we enter a banking hall, even in the fintech space now. No emoji has been able to replicate the smile. Even the smiles are fake on that. That's just that. But then let's look at fintech and the investment opportunities. You are trying, when I say you, I mean fintech operators, okay, you're trying to democratize these investment, platforms. Can you speak to this? How easy are you making it happen? More people are able to invest now. What are you doing right that maybe traditional banks didn't get so right back then, beyond automation of the process itself?
Okay, so I'm going to go back a bit, right? Okay. In terms of
the smiles?
Oh,
okay, let's go there.
I'll tell you, things are changing, right? Okay. Communication is a two-way street, the receiver and the sender, right? These days, let's call it Gen Z or Gen whatever the next letter is, right? The way communication happens is different. So it's a thing of understanding your customers and communicating with them the way they would understand. Trust me, putting an emoji in a message, right, means a lot to some of the customer segment, right?
Okay.
And I mean, I know my dad, it doesn't matter the amount of emoji you put in the message, it doesn't want to hear it. It just wants to speak to somebody, solve his problem, and move. So with that said, you know, different customers, different communication ways. Now, let's go back to the investment. The investment part of things, again, it is easier for customers to discover investment products through fintechs these days. It's all about discovery and access. Traditionally, if you would want to invest, right, you either buy into company shares, and God knows how long that process takes, and even getting your money out, you know, before now. Things are better, don't get me wrong, but when it comes to fintech and investment, it is a lot more accessible. It is faster to get in, faster to get out, and it gives the opportunity for people willing to invest to actually get access to data to make informed decisions. That is for those that are inclined not just to blind investment, but looking for the data supporting their investment. All that is available to you right now through fintech products, right? Unlike what we used to have. You could invest 100 Naira, right, in different products using different apps, right? That access is key. You don't have to worry about worry about SEC and the rest of the story that goes behind investment, right? All that has been sorted out for you because equal investment is regulated as well. Don't forget, fintech is a very highly regulated industry, right? And then you now bring in investment part of it, which even means more regulation. Now, with access and they said to whom much is given, much is expected, right?
Definitely.
It just brings up a whole lot of problems, or let me not say problem, a whole lot of things people investing need to know about before getting into it, just like any regular investment.
Okay, considering that internet penetration is still quite low in the rural areas, and then we have fintech providing lots of financial services, not just for the regular financial services, also investments. Are there products that would work with devices that are not internet enabled, so that those in the rural areas can actually benefit a lot from fintech?
Okay, I don't know what internet enabled means these days anymore, because everything is connected one way or the other. The question then becomes what you're doing with that connection. Yes, fintechs are providing that support. If you look at the way fintechs have brought the branches closer to the customers through POS and agency banking, right? That is one way to solve that problem in terms of what we're calling internet, if I get what you're saying. That solves our problem away. But then again, is it really about internet connection or being able to
navigate the internet
navigate
space.
the internet space and conclude the transaction the way you want it? There's the USSD that solves that problem. There's the agency banking that solves that problem. And the banks are not going away either, and they're not going to go away for a very long time, and the banks are still there. So it's a thing of meeting the customer where the customer is, right? And there's a lot of solutions for that out there. Internet, not perfect, but getting better as well.
Okay, now let's look at the volume of transaction now. Some of us are still a bit, skeptical, really, or maybe a bit cautious. If I want to handle maybe transaction to a particular amount of money, well, I really feel okay, fintech all the way. But when you're talking about millions of naira worth of transactions, some of us begin to pull the brake. Hey, we have to be careful here. We're talking about moving millions. How safe should we feel, or is there really a cause for alarm? Don't be salesy now. Don't be salesy. Be very real.
Is there a cause for alarm? There's always risk with any transaction, right? It's a thing of understanding the products you're getting yourself involved with. But look, over 200 billion naira worth of transactions are processed on human
Not
managers.
aggregate, so
Not aggregate.
I'm talking about from one individual
from one individual, let's break things down,
Okay.
right? Different transactions are from different sectors. So you have, let's say SME making a payment, for instance, salary payment, or a vendor supplier type payment. Those are transactions, and those are the real transactions that we don't get to talk about enough that are powered by fintech. Like I was saying earlier, over 200 billion naira worth of salaries were paid on Human Manager, which is one of our products, every month. So the question then becomes, who are the ones paying this, using these apps to make this payment? They're businesses and they're individuals. So there are different categories of transactions. As with any financial transactions, you should always be mindful of what you're doing. Imagine you're trying to conclude a transaction of, let's even just call it 5,000 naira, right? And there's somebody's shoulders surfing, looking at your PIN, right? At that point, you're not conscious. You're not aware of your surroundings when doing this transaction. So, yes, so you should always have that at the back of your mind when concluding a financial transaction. So should you be worried? Yes.
Okay.
Should you use the platforms? Yes.
Thank you for being honest.
Okay, but even at that, there is still a need for trust. More people to trust the system, so a lot of people could come on board. Those who are just on the fence right now and saying, oh, I'm never going to do that because I don't trust it. I think it puts me at greater risk of my accounts being compromised. So what are the ways, or how can you reassure such people who are still not trusting fintech?
It's about literacy, right? Financial literacy. The conversations needs to happen. Trust is a difficult thing to regain once lost, right? So the first thing is, what do we do to even gain the trust of people with all the stories about? It's about having the conversation and talking about it. Financial literacy is a thing. It's not just, financial literacy is not just about what investments to make, what kind of savings products should you have. It's all about app literacy, platform literacy, right? When concluding a financial transaction, make sure your PINs is not exposed, understanding the risk that comes. It's just like, storing your money in a vault and leaving the key out, then you worry about trust. No, right? So it's having the conversation and being literate about these platforms.
Okay, so we are still speaking with Mujibi Shola, the GCTO of Remit, and we've been talking about the place of fintech in improving the customer experience. We'll take a very short break and then we will return to conclude on that conversation. Please don't go anywhere. Thank you.
Thanks for staying tuned. We're still looking at fintech, the role of fintech in providing quality customer experience. Now, let's talk about cost of transaction. Now, in what way do fintech contribute to reduce cost of transaction? Because that is one thing that customers complain a lot when you talk about the conventional banking system. But with fintech, how does this happen?
Well, cost of transactions are really controlled within the space right now. And fintechs are about making it easy. It's a numbers game. The more customers you have, the more benefit you can derive from serving those customers, and the cost keeps coming down, especially because it's a regulated space. There's a need to differentiate between transaction cost and other costs that are associated with concluding that transaction from a customer's point of view. Imagine, let's say, for want of a figure, if the base cost of concluding a transaction is, say, 100 naira, right? There are other things that tack on to that customers don't take cognizance of, and then everything get banded into, oh, it's transaction fees. So it's as much as fintechs are, well, I can only speak for Remita, we are clear in terms of our pricing and our fees structure. It's clear for everybody to see. There's no hidden charges. For customers, when we talk about fees and cost, there's a need to also be mindful of the fine print. I think that's what most customers don't get to look into, and then we all come and talk about cost of transaction. It's also good for everybody to understand that in the fintech space, cost highly regulated by the CBN.
Okay, yeah, I like that. I was asking about the place of regulation here. Do fintech companies have a say in what the CBN ends up doing with regulation? What do I mean? Sometimes, at the level of NBC, for instance, in our own domain, NBC listens to us as practitioners and factors some of the things in before they come up with regulations in the better interest of all of us as practitioners. Do fintech companies have a say in shaping policy, even at that particular level of the CBN regulation? Do you?
Okay. Before now,
yes,
it was here and there. But right now, there's true collaboration, and there's always conversations going at different levels. Of course, there's always advocacy from the different groups trying to influence the government to do one thing or the other. And yes, I would say CBN more than ever are collaborating and listening to the players within the sector. Yes, they don't always do what we want.
Oh, they won't always do it.
But then again, we keep advocating and ensuring the policies are right for both the players and the customers.
Okay, they say the biggest room is the room for improvement. Regardless of the benefits the fintech has brought, what future developments should we expect to see regarding what will improve customer experience when it comes to financial services?
Okay, AI is doing magic right now, but I think it's about process improvement from the different fintechs that would incorporate that and make things better. A lot of fintechs, especially if you're starting out, if you're coming out of university, right, you don't realize that building a fintech is a 24/7 business, especially when it comes to customer interfaces, because transactions don't stop, right? The processes behind engaging customers are changing, and they'll keep changing. A lot of them will incorporate machine learning and AI more and more. Like I said before, those systems are not new anyway. It's just that the power and the combination of data available makes this a lot easier. So we should expect some magic happening in those spaces.
Okay, let's not forget your parents' body, the traditional banks, if you would allow me to say that. Maybe I have the liberty to call them your parents, really. In what areas do you think fintech companies, though you are self-sustaining in a context now, still need collaboration with traditional banks, really?
Okay, so no fintech, right, is allowed to keep money, which means that...
But you still domicile them inwards in the commercial banks?
So everybody, before now, it was let's watch, but right now is a thing of everybody understanding their roles within the space we are in. The banks are there to store value, right? Nobody other than a bank can store value. So for the fact that you can't keep money, you would forever be in collaboration with a bank.
With a bank, okay. That's a good one.
All right, apart from continually being in collaboration with the bank, which still means that maybe eternally or in the very near, very long future, the bank will still be your big partner. Are there challenges that impede the growth of fintech industry in Nigeria that still needs to be handled?
Okay, so if you, I think about the collaboration is always a speed thing, right? Fintechs, even though highly regulated, right, are not as regulated as banks, right? Fintechs want to move fast, but banks, they want to move fast, but at the same time, they're always mindful. So that speed and agility you see from fintechs is always going to be a thing with the banks. But the kind of policies and documents out there now to help to bridge the gap, if you think about the open banking initiative that is being pushed, this is going to make things a lot easier and smoother in terms of the collaboration that we're seeing. So yeah, it is what it is, right? We want to move fast because obviously the customers' demand and the customers' need keep changing day by day. But the banks equally, they want to move fast. But then again, because they are the ones responsible for keeping money, they tend to take a moment to catch up. But again, that is changing.
Okay, though we have an estimate, like I said earlier on, of about 200 and 300, I said I stand to be corrected. I still want to believe that we don't have enough going by our population and our demands, our financial demands. But then let's look at the ease of participation, the ease of coming in now as a player, not as a worker. What do we need? Lots of tech or lots of fund, or both?
What do we need? We need both. So lots of funds. Yes, money is always.
But you are not. You're just an intermediary. You just said you don't store value. Really,
we don't.
You're just provide a platform for exchange. Really.
You still need
so
to.
Why?
Pay for
Okay.
You need to pay for things. You need to pay for the people providing the innovations. You need to pay for servers. You need to pay for people on doing the work. So there's a lot to do with money. But if we leave money aside, right, the technology itself, right, requires people to keep coming in. The need of a stylist or a fashion entrepreneur is different from the needs of agri entrepreneurs. So there are different needs, and because there are different needs, fintechs would always come to play that role and fill the gap. So we need both the technology and we need the money.
No,
all right.
Sorry, apologies. I asked that because young people these days seem to be getting this all wrong. They believe because 2-3 of us can come together and come up with an app, we can actually play the game in the fintech space. That's why I was asking that question. Are there other needs? Is it just enough for us to have, okay, I can program, you can do this, okay, let's come together and get it done? After all, it's our world.
I mean, I talk about this all the time, right? Innovation comes from a few people, right? To have to really, really believe that this can be done. There's this problem, and we believe we have what it takes to solve it. So there's nothing wrong with having that passion and that belief that it can be solved, right? But the other part of it, like I said, is there's a lot involved in building a business around technology. Don't forget, it's a business. Yes, you have the technology, but there's a business side. There's the human capital side. There's the regulatory part. So there's a lot that goes into building a technology business from the technology itself.
All right, now with more entrants, what does that mean for the players and then the customers?
Customers' choice, opportunity to get better service, right? That's what it means for the customers ultimately, right? But for the players, it's one or two things, right? Some people will get acquired, right, in terms of form a bigger body, and it just keeps everybody on their toes. If a new player is coming in with a technology that would truly compete, then it will only push everyone in the industry to get better. So there's nothing wrong with them. The more the merrier. Eventually, things will get sorted. Things will sort themselves in terms of what is a business and what is not.
Okay, so let's just do a bit of comparison, if you can anyway. Compare fintech here in this part of the world to what obtains probably in the Western world. How well are we faring?
We're miles ahead. I keep saying
miles ahead of them. Right?
Yeah.
How? Explain. I'm glad anyway, for starters, to know that.
We're miles ahead because if you think about the human capital and the energy that Nigerian techpreneurs and engineers and everybody within the space, right, has put in. We've built the expertise. If you go look at some of those products that we're referring to, there's a Nigerian somewhere in there, right, doing the magic, right? And then aside from that, we've had issues that has pushed us to innovating, right? Innovation comes from when when a man is pushed to the wall, it's going to do what he needs to do to move. And we started doing instant payment faster than everybody. The US just started their Fed now, right? Just a few months back, and we've been doing it for how long, right? So we're not even complaining about instant payment anymore. We're even talking about instant payment. I don't know if there's anything such as that. So yeah.
All right. On the final notes, while you were talking about financial literacy, you mentioned app literacy, platform literacy. Could you expand that so whoever's watching could benefit from that and know what are the basics or what they need to know to help them be able to adequately navigate these platforms?
Okay, so app literacy and platform literacy is about how you use these financial apps. So every financial app has basic features, right, and how to do things. App literacy is about how you keep yourself safe whilst using a financial app. Simple things as, do not give your PIN out, don't click on links you don't know in messages and things like that. So it's just about how you keep yourself safe, especially, well, maybe not yourself, but your money is safe ultimately, right, when navigating these apps. So that's what it's about.
Right, thank you very much, Mujibi Shola, the GCTO for Remita, for speaking to the place of fintech in promoting customer experience. Fintech is here to stay and it's going nowhere, and I'm glad to hear that, okay, we're doing it better than some other parts of the world. Who says we can't be first? We are first among equals. And so on that note, we want to take a very short break, and we will return to conclude on the last lap of the show with Idausa Osamase, who will be speaking to the place of you, the customers, in improving the customer experience, because you get what you give out. That is just the way life works. Don't go anywhere.
This afternoon, I would like to talk about a touchy subject and an experience that I had. And that touchy subject is really about the etiquette of the lady's handbag. I went for a function at a friend's house, and there were quite a lot of people. And as I arrived, most of the chairs were taken. I spotted a chair that I made a beeline to. And as I got there, there was a lady sitting beside that particular empty chair, and there was a handbag on the chair. And I politely asked if there was anybody sitting on the chair. Was it reserved? She first eyed me from top to bottom, and she said no. So I was expecting, naturally, that she will then lift her bag so I could sit down. When she did not, I politely asked, please, may I sit on it? Very reluctantly took the bag and continuously stood up to just make things uncomfortable for me, passing drink over my head. And I got the message, and so I stood up and left the table at the particular chair. I would say this is the general, but this is not uncommon. I think it's wise not to put your bag on the ground if it's that expensive. But I also believe that it's not fair that you have a seat and reserve one seat for your bag whilst other people are standing. What exactly should be the etiquette around the ladies' handbags? Any contribution will help.
We are still talking about the banking experience, and we're now going to a particular zone that calls on us as customers. This zone, this leg of the topic, places the demand on the customers because you will be treated the way you present yourself most times. They say nobody commands respect, or nobody demands respect, as the case may see, but you demand, or you command it. Respect is reciprocal. If you want to be treated fairly in the banking sector, also respect yourself. So let us look at us, the customers. What do we need to do to ensure that we promote or we enjoy better banking experience in the bank? Okay, we have with us again Idausa Osamanze, who was with us earlier and he was speaking on that issue. We have looked at some other issues before now, but then let me talk about customers' impatience when we get into the banking hall. Maybe because we live in a fast world, everything has to be fast. Even withdrawals must be fast. We forget that there are protocols and processes in the banking sector. How does impatience, destroy customer experience within the banking hall?
I think that's one problem that we have as a people. There's a whole lot of impatience in us. But I think we should realize that just as we are regarded as king, the most important person in the economy, we must also realize as customers, the bank owes us a right to protect our asset, which is our fund that is deposited with them. And so the need to do due diligence is important, because you can ask somebody to fast track your process, and when the thing boomerang, you come back with a lawsuit, and then the bank has to pay more. So this is what is important, that the bank is a legal institution, and they play by rules and regulations. And so whatever practices that is done in the banking hall is in line with the laws that establish the bank. And therefore, we must allow bank to observe rules and regulations as customers.
Let's talk about agreements, even documents that are presented when certain financial services are required. Some customers don't even read them, just move straight to the part where they should sign. And ask, oh, is this where I sign? You append your signature. Maybe it's an investment, maybe it's a loan, or maybe it's a type of account that you're opening. But some customers do not even read them. And at the end of the day, it becomes a problem when the effect of those agreements begin to take place. How do we correct that?
I think most of this challenge really come from the bank marketing staffs who are on a drive to open plenty accounts. And sometimes these days you see them even along the road opening account for people because they just want to meet a target. This target banking is one of the biggest challenges that, of course, the banking industry in Nigeria is facing. Because for me, and the way I see it, I don't think that the banks are doing proper banking. And this is what is putting pressure on the marketing staff of banks in terms of selling products and services to customers. And I think the real reason why we are still tolerating this is that, of course, many people have not been able to even take advantage of their rights in this particular regard, because the CBN listed as part of the right of the customer is the right to be informed properly. In other words, if you're selling a product to me, you have to tell me everything about it. I had experiences with some people, especially in the microfinance, that they want to take a loan, and they tell them that the loan is 4%. And then they jump at it without realizing that the 4% is a monthly. It's not analyzed. So now they jump at that loan and only discover that 4% is actually not 4%. At the end of the day, it's over 28% that they're actually paying for the loan. But they are not informed, because the bank marketing staff just tell you, oh, it's 4%. And you don't disclose to the customer what are involved. And then, of course, they can't make informed decision in terms of signing. But then, nobody has taken up the bank on these issues. And I think, of course, if legal issues come out of these things, you will discover that a lot of banks will become very culpable, and then so much investment will have to be spent on litigations and the rest of it. And I think it's important that both the marketing staff of banks and their customers should do their due diligence to provide required information at both ends to ensure that these transactions are seamless and there are no sour tastes once such contracts are sealed.
Okay, still speaking of customer information, before the arrival of the digital components of banking, as I would like to call it, banking was purely traditional. And for some of us, even while we were in school, we had bank accounts open for us by some bank agents then. But we have evolved over time. Our identities in the context has evolved. The Miss of those days are now Mrs. something. The misters of those days have probably changed name, but we are yet to update our information. And we spoke to that earlier when Blessing mentioned the fact that people don't even provide accurate information at the point of registering or opening new bank accounts. What should customers now do, factoring in the evolution of their status over time, to ensure that we don't get complicated transactions at the end of the day, which will further drag down the customer experience?
If you look at the CBN guideline for duties and responsibilities of customers, you find that CBN rightly outlined that every customer should have knowledge and understanding. And it is the duty of customer to supply to the bank changes that has happened in the course of life. Because the bank is not treating you as one person. And you are not giving them IV about your marriage or your change of names. So you should be the one to go to the bank to say, now my status has changed. I have a new name. I have changed my name. I am now Mrs. instead of Mr. I was 17 when this account was opened for me. Now I am 18. I am now a bankable person. All these details, you are the one to supply it to the bank. That is the duty of the customer. It's not the place of the bank to begin to chase you to ask about those changes. So it is the bank also again to enlighten the public, to tell them that, look, when certain changes occur in your life, you need to come back to us to feed us back so that we can update your details with us so that we don't have issues when transactions will need to happen.
Still talking about being informed, there are certain information that the customers should have that help them in resolving any issue that they may have, such as knowing who your account officer is. But some customers do not even know. So how can the banks help people with help customers with information that they need that will also help them in attending to issues, so that people don't queue up maybe at the wrong places waiting to talk to one customer care officer? Something happens, you could easily call your account officer to come to the rescue, so it takes care of you having to go to the bank.
Well, I think the banks, to be fair to them, are doing greatly in these regards. Some of my mobile applications, if you open them, you discover that you have where your customer service agent is actually, his telephone number, his email numbers are there on the app. And these are almost automated. So I think it's also for us to take advantage of these various platforms that are available to us, and then we are able to actually get these things. And then, of course, sometimes you can also walk into the bank customer service and they can tell you who your customer rep is. There are also customer lines to be called. There are WhatsApp lines, there are emails that, of course, customers need to take advantage of to reach to the banks to know who their customer or their agent in the bank is, who deal directly, or their account officer, as it's popularly called. So I think it is the duty of the customer to also look at their banks and understand and read out information, learn information, ask questions about it before going into contract. You see, because it's a contract and it's a two-way thing. So the bank supply one side, then, of course, the customer has the right to supply some information that are also very detailed.
Okay, let's look at the place of ego in customer experience. I use this carefully because when you hear what comes out of the mouth of some customers, you will wonder if they ever factor in the fact that these bankers or these bank personnel are even human beings like them. Of course, because the customer is king, and you see that young lady there smiling at you, even if she is boiling inside, yet you keep on, assaulting verbally. How should people handle their ego and factor in the fact that these people are also human beings like you? And, what you give, after a while, you push them to the wall, you will get it back. Really.
Well, that's again another very serious issue. I remember a clip I watched some time ago of a certain man who went to the bank and was shouting everywhere. And the manager had to come down and say, what's the problem? And I said, I want to draw money. I said, how much is this money? He said, 500. And they had to take him to the manager's office. And at the end of the day, the manager was thinking that he wanted to withdraw 500,000. Not knowing it was just 500 naira.
Was that a excuse or what?
What is his money? That's the mindset that a lot of customers have. That it's my
the
money.
skit, of course, came out this way, and the man has to eat a good meal that afternoon just to see that it's attended to. You see, sometimes we take our egos overboard. And this happens not just even in the bank, it's everywhere. You know that a typical Nigerian, there is this slang we use, do you know who I am?
Who I am?
It's just that you don't have identity. People who know who they are, they don't ask those questions because even you are struggling to gain your identities. And this happens to many of us, that sometimes we go to places that we want to be treated differently. Now, you also realize that the CBN says the bank has the right to treat every customer equally, irrespective of the volume you have in the bank, irrespective of your ability or disability, irrespective of your gender or age. Now, the CBN says every customer is the same and they should be treated equally. And so when we go to bank and there's a queue, we should respect queue.
Then there are certain categories of customers for some banks. You have some who are premium customers. So where is their place if everybody has to be treated the same?
Yeah, but you see, of course, bank will have those lines of way of dealing with some people. Some people never really get to the bank. All they need is to call their customer because, of course, the bank needs the money. And this is where really, for me, where I feel that core banking really need to put a whole lot of energy, not just gathering funds from people who today they are tired, they want to put out fund. Banks should also do a lot of investments.
Okay.
In what area?
A lot of investment in agriculture. In other business economy, where funds can actually come. Because they're commercial banks and they're supposed to be making profit and giving to depositors. So this is what is required really to stimulate the economy to grow. Because all these ones that we are chasing after people, to just who have money, they put in money here. And when you misbehave, they take your money. And this is why you cannot actually enforce this doctrine of equality. Now, if you have a lot of investment that you really don't need to have somebody put money in your account so that one marketing staff can get paid for a month, this will not be happening. But the real problem is here because we're not doing proper banking. And of course, you also know that saving culture is also very low. Here, because a lot of people put in money in the bank and before the month end they have overdrawn it, so the bank can actually accumulate it to use it for facility or loan to give to other people, then they can recoup interest. But I think that for the billions and billions of profit we declare, banks should also deliberately invest in the economy and see how much they can generate. They can invest in the power sector. Who said they cannot? They can come together to invest in the energy sector. They can come together to invest in the petroleum and gas sector and actually do business. And they have strong muscles to actually stimulate the economic growth because they have the capacity.
Okay. All right, there is this question that borders on morality. Okay, I like to paint a scenario. You walk into a particular bank and your wife is the one on the desk as a cashier and there's a long queue. By default, there is filial communication. That's my wife over there. Now, how should you behave yourself? You have a queue there, and you know what can happen because that's your wife there.
Yeah, but I think, again, it has to do with individuals from one person to another. If you are distant from home, you will realize that there are people in front of you who need to be served. I'm not the one really in a hurry. So these are things that we must respect, because in other climes, you drop your family at home. When you come to the workspace, it is official, and people are treated officially and no professional treatment. Because morally speaking, if you do that, you see, we see that a lot. Not even just in the bank, even in the filling station, you see somebody come and serve because they know somebody, and they go and use the back door to come in. And then that creates a lot of confusion. So I believe that, I feel that people should be responsible enough to go into a system and take their turn and get services which they come in for.
Now, where cases like that happen, maybe the husband or it's even the wife who has a husband who's a banker, do not want to respect that, and they want to capitalize on familiarity, or this person is my relative, so I can't be on the queue and I know somebody. What's the benefit of having someone like that? And other customers are dissatisfied. I know that there are channels banks open where customers can send feedback on the experience so they know how better to serve them or where to improve. But some customers would not make use of those channels. Some are automated, some are even in a box within the banking hall. You could just write something and put it there. Feedback. How should customers use this?
Well, I think, again, experience, like they say, is the best teacher. Sometimes people just feel that those feedback that you send really don't matter because they don't see changes happen. Because the same practice or practices are repeated over and over again. So what is here is that if people see that feedbacks become meaningful, then of course people will avail it. Take for example, if you go in the ministry in UAE, they rate ministries. So anywhere you go to obtain a service, there is a small board there where you rate them. You just press it. If you are satisfied, you press. If you are dissatisfied, you press. And then, of course, it goes to a central server. And at the end of the day, it's analyzed and they tell you, for this month, this is a bank that has done well. That's your customer service. Now, if you're rating...
That can be abused, really.
No.
It can be abused. It's a matter of voting. If a bank can sponsor enough people to vote against another bank, it's possible.
No. I don't think the cost.
You don't think it is possible to be abused?
You see, the cost of sponsorship. How much are you going to use to sponsor somebody to come and vote? You have to vote based on the transaction you have done in the bank. So, or your experience you got while you are in the bank. So, if you see, because again, this speaks to the morality you have talked about earlier, and you can imagine the way we think. We're always thinking on how to short-circuit a process.
Processes have been short-circuited in the past. So
yeah, but that's why I speak to experience. That's why I say experience is the best teacher. And I find this really very humiliating every time we have to talk. That, you see, we're always looking at one side of the coin and not taking advantage of the other side. I was asking somebody yesterday, you see, I am worried at the level of immorality in our system. That, for example, you have to watch somebody do work for you so that he will not cheat you. And this is so wired in our DNA that the ample time that you have been spending doing something that is useful, you have to use it to supervise another person who is doing his work, because a lot of us are very dubious in terms of the way we think and act. That's the issues of morality that we speak about. It's so prevalent in our environment. But I feel really that the feedback mechanism should actually serve as a motivation. And if they are publicized from time to time, you will see that it will also swell customer views about banks. And then the banks will need to sit tight to ensure that they don't lose their customers. Because people will want to go to places where they are treated well. They are treated with dignity, they are treated with utmost respect. So if I come to your bank and you're not treating me well, and there's an alternate bank where I'll be treated well, I will simply move my account and go to where I'll get my respect and dignity.
Okay, now let's look at social media as a platform of feedback. I really sometimes pity the community managers who manage social media handles of banks, because no matter what products, no matter how customer-centric a particular campaign is, there will be people who will just go into the comment section to say things that are not related to what you are discussing there, and they just vent raw anger there. Is this not an abuse of that platform? Of course. I mean, when you have people talking about, okay, this is good, and the campaign, you don't speak to the campaign. You just see it as a personal attack platform to launch an attack.
Yeah, I see that from time to time on Twitter, where a lot of people are even discussing real issues that are not bank related, and then you see somebody just drop a comment and said, I had a very terrible experience in this bank or that bank. And then, of course, I also see that there's a whole lot of detailed response that you find from this bank to say, look, what are your complaints? Please forward it to these places. And I think that is fair enough, that people are abusing social media that you cannot control, because the telephone is in your hand, the internet is with you, so you can do a lot of things. But I think what banks need to do is also to see that when these things are coming, they also know that it affects their public image. And therefore, they should be able to speak to it openly in the mainline media to correct some of the negative impressions. You see, because a lot of people don't even have information. And they don't have detailed information. Now, the revised act, for example, on your statement says, okay, if you print a statement or you ask for a statement, of course, banks should give it to you free. But if you are making a special request, there's a charge that is on it, which is about 50 naira per page. So the fact that the CBN says that you are entitled to a statement in a month does not mean that at every request you will just get it free, because the same rule says that you have to pay 50 naira per page. So that depends on what you want to print or what request that you are making from banks. So these are real issues. Our communications are very critical. And I think the corporate communications of banks need to do a lot more. Apart from advertising product and services, they also need to do a lot of customer engagement so that people understand the rules of the game. And then, of course, a lot of this back and forth that comes, we see in the banking hall, we can actually avoid them.
Okay, now let's still take a look at the banking hall. While we're talking about fintech, I mentioned that customers still miss the smiles that they see bankers wear when they get into the hall, the way they warmly receive customers. Now, it's a two-way traffic. For the customer who wants to continue to see the smile on the face of the customer, how is that customer also greeting or interacting with the banker? Now, sometimes we see some customers get into the banking hall. Maybe they feel they're not being attended to very well, or they've had one issue with using the bank, and then they come into the bank very angry. And the banker is responding to them, but they seem not to be satisfied. And the next thing they're asking, oh, I want to talk to your manager. I want to talk to the next person here, putting the bankers themselves under pressure, making them feel threatened while even delivering on their job. So what are the ways we can correct that practice?
Well, I think this again is a cultural thing that we have seen here. A lot of people are not embracing internet. There are a lot of misconceptions about the internet. People feel that there's a whole lot of fraud coming. I've heard people say, oh, if you do POS, that the POS, they can even retrieve your PIN and eventually use it to withdraw money from your account. You know, some of all these issues are not really verifiable, and banks should be able to speak to them. Because if your numbers are encrypted, as they call it, and then you put them on your POS, it will be difficult for somebody to retrieve it. You see, in most cases, some people or some customers are also not careful enough to see that they are punching their PIN, and somebody is, like the man from the fintech said, people is overlooking your PIN from your shoulder, and afterward they can actually use it to defraud you. So there are also some applications that some fraudsters are also using now also to retrieve information from devices. All these things are there. But I think it is responsibility of the customers first to keep their information and their details safe, their PIN number, their password, and the rest of it, keep them safe so that, of course, people don't have access to it. Most of the time, you see people come angrily to the bank. They are expecting that the bank should do miracle for their own mistakes. This is the real issues. And you see, for example, I had an incident where one of my sister was robbed. And inside the car, they ask you for your PIN. You got to give them your PIN. But you can't hold the bank accountable for that because you were under duress and you have given out your PIN. And of course, these experiences also had made a lot of people to run away from these platforms, this internet platform of banking. Because in Lagos here, you can enter into a one-chance bus, and then at the end of the day, they take your phone and ask you to do the transfer, and you do it yourself. So this is one of the issues that we face because the entire space is not secured. And I think with security and then again a lot of enlightenment, both from government, from religious institutions, from communities, traditional rulers, to see how we can build honesty and integrity into our system, some of all this anger will not cease in the bank. But I don't think there's anything somebody really want to do with a bank, a banker smile. I don't know how much food he puts on the table and how much money he puts on somebody's pocket.
It matters. It matters. After all, I'm a king. Customer. The customer is king. Okay. That is how much we can take from customer in Dawusa. This morning on the show. Oh, it's been fun talking about banking. And okay, we want to say thank you for being with us from 7 a.m. up till now. But we're not done yet on the early part of the transmission from here because we have Business Insight with Olaoluwa Awe. But at this point, Customer Ayo, I'm signing out. Customer Blessing, how are you?
All right, before I sign out, I must thank the production team that has given us a good customer experience today. I know that
Yes.
your feedback will be that it was a wonderful customer experience watching Early Exchange all through this morning. I am Blessing AG. Early Exchange returns tomorrow at 7 a.m. Do not leave Sick News because Business Insights comes up at 10 a.m. Stay tuned.